Buenas tardes. Es un placer y un honor estar aquí con ustedes.
Gracias.
Quiere empezar en un tema muy serio.
Do I need to translate?
We just learned as we were driving over that 11 people were killed in Virginia Beach today in yet another mass shooting in this country. I just found out about it as I was coming over here, and I just wanted us to take a second to think about those families, those survivors, that community, and this country at this moment. There is not a place that we visit where we don't meet people who've been affected by this, who are thinking about it almost every waking second of their lives, especially students in schools as classrooms as young as 5 years old, active shooter drills, middle school students who ask me, what is it going to take so that I don't go to school wondering if I'm going to come home at the end of the day? High school students who tell me that they have an active shooter drill that they do every single week, knowing exactly which bookshelf they are going to push over to try to delay that shooter as he comes into that classroom against kids who are absolutely defenseless. More than 30,000 lives lost in the United States every single year. No other country on the face of the planet comes close to this level of carnage and bloodshed. We are not inherently violent or evil or bad. This is a human-caused problem with a human solution. And if we will listen to one another, disregard the impact and the influence of the gun lobby and the NRA and the political action committees, if we'll pass universal background checks without exception, close every single loophole from the Charleston loophole to the gun show loophole to the boyfriend loophole, if we'll stop selling weapons of war that are designed and engineered and sold to the United States military in the first place because they're really good at killing people very effectively, very efficiently, in very great numbers. We'll have red flag laws in every single part of this country, so someone who is going to be a harm to themselves or to someone in their lives or someone in your life, they're stopped before it is too late. We will begin saving the lives in our lives and in this country. And I want to make sure that at this moment that we offer our thoughts and our prayers, we also offer our action and our commitment to do what is necessary while we have the chance before us. And so I know that this is all something that all of us are thinking about right now, and I just wanted to acknowledge that at the outset and just send all the power and strength and love in this room to our fellow Americans in Virginia Beach. Sarah, Zach, Laura, the other hosts who brought so many great, amazing people together on a day when there are 23 other candidates bringing great, amazing people together in the same city. Thank you for pulling this off. This is absolutely incredible. And what you all have done with the weather is nothing short of amazing. Thank you for having us out. We bring you greetings, saludos, desde mi comunidad de El Paso, my hometown of El Paso, Texas, one half of the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere. Along with Ciudad Juarez, 3 million people from 2 countries, speaking 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 histories, joined, not separated, by the Rio Grande River, forming something far greater and more powerful than the sum of our parts. I know Elizabeth knows this from firsthand experience growing up there. Just met a Burgess High School grad, go Mustangs. You all know what I'm talking about and exactly what I was thinking when I got set up with Amy on our first date, a blind one. She's not from El Paso, and so when I picked her up at the house that she was staying at, I took her over the border to have a drink where the margarita was invented at the Kentucky Club. Walked down Avenida Juarez to the Customs House, where the first time a president of the United States and a president of Mexico ever met. It was there in 1909, Taft and Diaz. They had a reciprocal meeting on the El Paso side where Taft broke the chair that he was sitting in. They still have the pieces there at the Chamber of Commerce. We went over to the Mission of Guadalupe, this little placita in front there. Amy and I sat down on a bench, took in the sights and the sounds and the smells of this incredibly amazing binational community. Everything to celebrate and to be proud of and to share with the rest of the country. Nothing to be defensive for or afraid of right now, regardless of the rhetoric or the fear that they try to instill in us to make us angry and afraid and keep us apart. El Paso, Texas, one of, if not the safest cities in the United States of America today, and it has been for the last 20 years running, before and after there was a wall in our community, not despite the fact that we're a city of immigrants, and a quarter of those with whom we live were born somewhere else and chose us, left their hometowns, their families, their language, their country, to start anew as strangers in a strange land. It is because of the choice they made and their very presence that we are so strong, so successful, and yes, so safe. And Sarah asked me to talk about an immigration proposal informed by, inspired by the people with whom I live, the city that I call home, this amazing country comprised of asylum seekers and refugees and immigrants the world over. It gets us off the back foot. We stop apologizing or defending and saying we will do this first and then we'll get to all the great things that we want to do. We say the great things that we know are right are essential to everything else that is important in this country. For example, the chaos that this president has created at the border, the crisis that he has produced, the fire that he has set that he now wants credit for putting out. We're going to make sure that we restore order and humanity to this country where we meet the rest of the world. We will never again put another child in a cage, nor will we deport her mother back to the country from which she fled. All those families who are still separated tonight, while we enjoy one another's company and our freedom and this democracy, we will spare no expense to reunite them, to make sure that they can see one another again, and we stop this cruelty and torture that we are visiting on our fellow human beings. Those asylum seekers who have traveled 2,000 miles, much of that on foot, some of it atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, when they show up here to this country, we're going to make sure that we follow our own asylum laws. We will not detain them. We will release them into a family case management program at a fraction of the cost and to the benefit of our common humanity, our safety, our security, and their ability to follow our own laws. We will do far better. And then those more than 1 million dreamers, just as American as anyone else in this room, forever free them from any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens in this, their true home country. Their brothers, their sisters, their parents, millions more, too many of them working the toughest, most back-breaking work that you can find in the United States of America today. Sometimes, if lucky, working for minimum wage, far too often working for far less than a minimum wage. Their immigration status used as leverage against them, keeping them in modern-day bondage. We free them from that as well. Bring them forward into the light, allow them to register with this government, and set them on a path to citizenship as well. Not only is it the right thing to do, the conservative estimate is that over the next 20 years, it adds $1.2 trillion to the United States economy. It revives our democracy. It restores these small towns that otherwise would perish without the investment of people and economic life and vitality that these immigrants bring. And then those northern triangle countries, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, instead of cutting off all aid and punishing them for what they cannot control, we work with them and invest in violence reduction, help those farmers in Honduras who are going through a record drought right now, caused not by God nor by Mother Nature, but by you and me, our excesses, our emissions, our inaction in the face of the facts and the science. We make sure that we help them so that no family ever has to face that god-awful decision of sending their 3-year-old child on that 2,000-mile journey to show up in a cornfield outside of Brownsville, Texas, alone with a permanent marker phone number written on their shoe, as we just saw 3 weeks ago in the Rio Grande Valley. That's this country living up to its full potential and fulfilling its promise. And it doesn't have to be a plan of Democrats, nor of Republicans, nor independents. It's just Americans first before we are anything else. And I want to make sure that we bring everyone to the table and everyone to the solution. Though it may be inspired by my hometown of El Paso, Texas, though it may resonate with you here in San Francisco, California, whether we're in Iowa or New Hampshire or Michigan or Pennsylvania, we're meeting our fellow Americans and immigrants among them who want to see us do the right thing, and they will meet this moment with the urgency that it demands. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our immigration plan. So, Sarah, thank you for One other request that came in as I was getting a chance to shake hands, and thank you all for coming out here.
We want a Dream Act.
We want a Dream Act, and we want to make sure those dreamers are here in this country contributing to their full potential. But I was also asked to talk about climate, and thanks to Zach and Mackenzie and others, they produced a climate primer with a focus on California that adds to our knowledge about what's happening all over this country and around the world right now. In that document that Mackenzie put together, I learned about California going through years of drought from 2012 to 2016. It informs what I saw in the Central Valley just a couple of weeks ago, going to a community, Mariposa, meeting the firefighters there who fought one of the greatest fires, preceded by that drought, the infestation of beetles, the consumption of thousands, tens of thousands of acres and human lives and property and entire communities. Not unlike the devastation that we're seeing in Houston, Texas. 58 inches of rain fell from the sky in a single storm in 2017. That is the landfall record for a storm in North America for as long as we've been keeping records in North America. And it was the third 500-year flood in just 5 years. We would love to think that Houston's good for the next 1,500 years, but they're not. Because the scientists tell us that the fires in California, the health consequences that you suffered right here in San Francisco from them, the floods in Houston, Texas, or along the Missouri River or the Mississippi River in Iowa, the droughts in the Panhandle and in West Texas, the devastation that we're seeing in the Midwest right now, record number of tornadoes, destroying communities and taking the lives of our fellow Americans. All of this, we are told, will pale in comparison with the destruction, the devastation, and the death that we will see in our children's generation unless we use these next 10 years for all that they are worth. If we can free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, fully invest in the next generation of renewable technology, take the lead for the world in storing renewable energy from the sun and the wind to distribute it when it makes the most sense for our communities and for the grid, putting farmers in the driver's seat, paying them a profit for the environmental services that they provide. What if we incentivize them to plant cover crops and capture more carbon out of the air, sequester it in the soil? No-till or precision-till farming so we disturb less of it that is already there. Keep more land in conservation and make sure the incentive is to keep it intact instead of to cultivate every single inch or to subdivide it and to develop it. What if we, all of us together, not half the country, not by half measure or half steps, did everything we could at this defining and deciding moment of truth, and then took our rightful role on the world stage as the indispensable country, convened the other powers of the planet together, and kept us from warming another 2 degrees Celsius. Our plan, mobilizing $5 trillion over the next 10 years, setting definite caps on the amount of emissions every single year going forward until we are at net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, halfway there by 2030, using every lever of the federal government to make sure that there are no new oil and gas leases on federal lands or protected federal waterways, making sure that current leases reflect the true cost of pollution and climate change. That's us coming together, again, not defined or divided by party or geography or any other difference, to do what this country and the generations that follow us call for. But the only way that we're going to be up to these challenges, or the challenges of healthcare, or a far more inclusive economy and much more conscientious capitalism, is if we heal the divisions that we have in this country today, further polarized by the moment by a president who will stop at nothing to keep us apart and afraid from one another, a democracy badly damaged, further undermined every day by that same president who invites attacks from without and undermines us from within. My whole life has been about bringing people together. As a small business owner in El Paso, Texas, building a great team for high wage, high tech, high skilled jobs in a place you might least expect to find them, serving on the El Paso City Council in a nonpartisan position, not as a Democrat nor as a Republican, but just as an El Pasoan who's going to get after it and deliver for my constituents. I held a town hall meeting like this every single week for 6 years. And you were there if you had a world-class economic development idea. You were there if you were going to help me balance the budget, as we did for every one of those 6 years. You were there if your neighbor's dog was barking too loud the night before and you wanted to tell me. And those contributions made me accountable to the people who put me in that position of public trust in the first place. And not only did we do what was needed from us to make sure that the city ran the best that it could, but we took on the tough fights together. In 2009, when we extended health care benefits to the same-sex partners of city employees, that provoked recall elections, political backlash, but we stood firm because we knew that at its heart, the community of El Paso was with us. We brought those lessons to bear as a member of Congress for 6 years. Just met a mother of a Special Forces Army member. And what I told her is that we need a commander-in-chief who's going to value his sacrifice, make sure that we do not continue to pursue this country's foreign policies on the backs of 19 and 20 and 21-year-old women and men who are in wars that stretch from Afghanistan to Syria to Iraq to Yemen to Somalia to Libya, and then to make sure that when they do come back to this country, they receive the care that they should be guaranteed. Make sure that that post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma is treated so they can get back on their feet and contribute to this country's greatness. We were able to begin that work in a Republican-controlled Congress for those 6 years. Protect public lands, do what we needed to do for our constituents and for our country. And lastly, all of you in this room who helped us in Texas, some of you leaving San Francisco to spend weeks or months on the ground in my home state, helping us to travel to 254 counties to win more votes than any Democrat has ever won in the history of the state of Texas. We made lots of calls. We won independence for the first time in decades. 500,000 Republicans who also voted for Greg Abbott voted for us on the same ballot. And it required nothing more of us than to show up with the courage of our convictions on a boldly progressive agenda in the smallest, most rural, most Republican places, not in the state of Texas, but in the planet. You can see them glowing red from outer space as you orbit the Earth. But we showed up there to include everyone, to guarantee that no one was written off and no one was taken for granted. Young voter turnout up 500% from the last election. All of us together created a movement in Texas. And it took a state that ranked 50th in voter turnout before 2018 to a state who is now in play for every statewide and every national election. Our 38 electoral college votes have been unlocked, are in competition right now because of you and because of our work to bring people together and to repair this democracy. I think that's what it's going to take to defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020. I know that's what it's going to take to bring this country back together again in January of 2021. And I look forward to doing this work with you and serving you as the next president of the United States.
I know you're normally schwitzy, but we made it extra hot for you today, okay?
I love it. Yeah.
So, we're gonna do a little thing, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say something. So I'm gonna say, who's gonna donate? And you're gonna say me.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna say, when are you gonna donate? And you're gonna say, now. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready, I got it.
You can do this,
Yes,
right?
here we go.
All right, you got this. Who's gonna donate?
Me.
Wait, you guys are next.